All right, guys, welcome back to the Let's Talk Ball pod. This is episode 8, and we are going to do a transfer window special for you guys this week. But before we do that, we're just going to talk about Arsenal and United from game week 3, and then at the end, we might get a sneak peek into some updated Premier League predictions. But I'm here with Spain again, and we're excited to chat with you guys. So let's jump right into it. I wanted to start with talking about the Arsenal match real quick. What were your thoughts on that, Spain?
Yeah, it's good to be back. Good to be talking some soccer, some Premier League. I really hate this international break, just because you get like such a tease through weeks in. You get really like into the groove of watching soccer get on the weekends. So having this weekend off with no soccer was quite a bummer. But happy to be talking ball again with you. But yeah, Arsenal, Brighton ended in a 1-1 draw. Tough result for Arsenal. We looked really good in the first half. We were in control of the game. Kai Havertz scored a really nice first time half volley finish where he like looped the ball over the goalkeeper. Seeing him score that type of finish early in the season is really great to see. Last year he was definitely not scoring that goal earlier in the season, so that was really nice. And I thought we just controlled the game. Went to halftime, felt good, and then early in the second half, the red card happened. Declan Rice was in the corner of Brighton's end, and he fouled Veltman. And then as Rice is walking away, Veltman rolls the ball as if he's like gonna take a free kick, and it hits the back of Declan Rice's left heel. Declan Rice is turned away from Veltman, doesn't see what's going on, and like barely toe pokes the ball. And Veltman sees this and fully takes a swing, like as if he's going to kick the ball, even though it's pretty. He's not going to kick the ball like that. Clearly,
Yeah,
and
no way.
they're not really in a position to take a quick free kick from where they are, and just completely takes a swipe at Rice, and then whole kind of like drama happens, and Declan Rice gets a second yellow card, which leads to a red. I'd like to get your perspective on this, Tochi, before I give what's probably a biased opinion. I want to hear what you have to say before I give my opinion on that.
Yeah, you'll probably be in agreement with my view on it, but I thought there's no way you can give a second yellow there and give a red, at least in the spirit of the game. Like, there's a few things that I noted, like I think people were saying João Pedro booted the ball at one point in the game, and I don't know if he got booked for that. But regardless of anything else that happened, Veltman picks it up as if he's trying to take a quick free kick. But Michael Richards touched on this in a podcast I was watching, and if you want to take a quick free kick, you're not spinning the ball out 5 yards in front of you. You're putting your hand directly on the ball where it is and taking the free kick. You could tell Veltman purposely threw it at Rice and then basically just took a swipe at Rice's ankles. There's no way he was going for the ball. And so, one, I think Veltman could have been booked, like maybe even red card for what he did towards Rice. And then I don't think there's no way you can just the spirit of the game. Like I said, there's no way you can give a second yellow to Declan Rice there. That's just such a big call to make for a referee. And I think that's one of those like common sense moments where like, did Rice kick the ball away? Sure, but it's just, I don't know. I just don't see how you can give that second yellow there, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear from a non-Arsenal fan, but I totally agree. It's not deserving of a red card in any sense, or a second yellow in any sense. He barely touched the ball. All your points are really valid. I think Veltman said he was trying to get Rice carded. So he intentionally saw the opportunity, went for it, and the ref gave it to him. But yeah, the spirit of the game, it just wasn't deserving. And the refs have discretion to make these calls, and it's on the ref, in my opinion. I put hardly any blame on Declan Rice. Like, any player does that. He barely took the ball away. Yeah, that just completely changed the game for us. It's unfortunate, and what sucks even more is that Declan Rice will be out of the North London Derby, which is a huge game coming up for us this upcoming weekend. So it's really frustrating as an Arsenal fan to see that happen. And then from there, we were just down a man. João Pedro scored a goal. A lot of blame is being put on Partey for not tracking. Watching the highlights, he should have tracked João Pedro better. but it's just being down a man. We were really open and hadn't really figured out how we wanted to play for the rest of the game, be down a man. And that's what led to that goal. That ball never gets through if we have 11 men on the pitch. Like, we never let a ball break lines like that. So that's what killed us. And off a rebound, Pedro finishes it. But with all that, I thought we still played pretty well in the second half. I thought we even deserved to win it. I have to give a lot of props to Kai Havertz and Saka. They ran so hard. They gave so much effort, basically on their own up top, just trying to create chances by themselves, just beating players, and we had some really good chances. In the 75th minute, I was really impressed by Kai Havertz. I think it was Gabriel just like hoofed the ball as a clearance up the field. Kai Havertz was all on his own, chased it down. It was like a really high looping ball, came down like just over half over midfield, and he took a phenomenal touch out of the air first time to set him in one-on-one. Held off one of the defenders and almost scored. It would have been amazing if he scored, but it would have been a really tough finish given how much effort he'd already exerted to get where he was, a little off balance, and a lot of pressure on his back from the defender. But if he would have scored that, it would have been one of the goals of the season, just based off his first touch and his ability to finish and given the context of the game. We had another really good chance, Kai Havertz getting in behind, playing a good ball into Saka, and Saka stressed and just couldn't quite make enough contact to score. But I thought we really fought hard, showed a lot of determination to score and win the game, and almost had enough to win, even being down a man. With that being said, disappointing draw, but given the context, I'll take it. I can't really be too upset with our team. Just tough circumstances with the red card.
Yeah, definitely tough circumstances, but good fight and good job to keep it at least from turning into a loss versus a draw. And I will say, as a United fan, I can empathize with you with an unmarked João Pedro scoring a goal against you guys. It happens to the best of the teams, obviously.
Yeah.
And then to your points about Kai Havertz, I also want to give him his props as well. I'm a big Kai Havertz fan myself, and I love seeing him play well. And he's just continuing to impress. I even watched a little bit of him during this international break for Germany, and he looked sharp for them. I don't know if he ended up scoring. I can't remember. But just the moments that I watched him play, he's just like such a unique, like a lot of people like to say, oh, Kai Havertz is an elite at this or that. But he's just such a unique profile of player to where he's a target man, but he is good with his like first touch and bringing the ball down. And he's a threat in behind off the shoulder of defenders, but then also can take the ball to feet and link up play well. He's just so good at a lot of different things. Like he can almost play across the front line of an attack, and just is a very unique player. So I think he's someone that has gained my respect and will continue to gain the respect of Premier League fans, neutrals, rival fans alike, as the season goes on.
Yep. The Arsenal game was the 7:30 a.m. game 2 weekends ago on Saturday. So did you watch the game by chance?
Yeah, I watched the first half of the game, and then after the red card happened, I decided to catch a little bit of a break, and I went back to sleep for a little bit. So I didn't watch the second half of the game, but I did watch the first half, and it was interesting. Like, I do think Arsenal was in control and probably going to go on to win that game had they had 11 men. But I will say I have been impressed with Brighton and their performances to start the season. I think them and their new manager, I don't even know how to say his name, Herzler or something like that.
Yeah, Hertzler, I think.
Hertzler.
Yeah.
I have been really impressed with how he's got them playing. I think Roberto De Zerbi, his shoes are some big ones to fill at Brighton. He had them playing some very good football, and it looks like there hasn't been too much of a drop-off with him leaving, which is impressive. They still have yet to have a huge... I mean, Arsenal's a big test, but 10-man Arsenal is a different test than regular, so it's the jury's still out to see how they'll go toe-to-toe with some of these big teams, but I do think that they are a team that kind of thrives off this underdog role that they play, and I think Arsenal is not the only big team that they are going to be able to get some points off of this season. So I thought that was something that I was impressed to see. Yeah,
I think Brighton are a good team this year, and you need to go back and watch the highlights for that just that one Kai Havertz chance I was talking about, because I think you'll be just really impressed with what Havertz did there. And before we move on to United versus Liverpool, I'd just like to touch on what's upcoming for Arsenal. Got a really, really big few weeks coming ahead. We got the North So we're recording on Monday, the September 9th. Coming up this weekend, Sunday at 9 a.m., we've got the North London Derby. Really big game for us. We were missing Declan Rice. Mikel Marino, who came in for us, broke his collarbone, or has a shoulder injury. I think it's probably a broken collarbone. So he's out for us, and just found out that Martin Odegaard might be out. He looks like he sprained his ankle or had some type of ankle injury. We just found out about that, so he might be out as well. So just a really big game for us with some big midfielders missing. And then with the Champions League coming up, and we also, that's kicking off, I think, right midweek after the Tottenham game. And then we've got City away, which is another massive game for us. And in between that, we play away at Atalanta on Thursday. So we go away to Atalanta on Thursday, and then away to City. And then whereas City have home on Wednesday and home on Sunday. So we'll have a really big advantage in that sense of not having to travel. So it's going to be a really, really big 2-3 weeks for Arsenal. It's going to be a really big test for us, and we'll see how we do. I'm confident we'll perform, especially against Tottenham. We'll show up big, but it'll hang largely on the fitness of Odegaard with Rice being out and just our midfielders as a whole. And then City's advantage has me a little worried at the moment, I'll be honest, with just like the scheduling.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough break and going to be a heck of a weaker, like it's going to be a heck of like, what is it, 7-day period actually, because you play Sunday, Thursday, then Sunday again. So going to be a really big test for Arteta. I think he's a guy that preaches being a mentality monster. So I think this is going to be a real test of the Arsenal team's mentality. Like, can they dig deep when kind of odds are stacked against them, when they're kind of running thin on energy, that kind of stuff. It'll be really interesting to see, one, how they approach the Thursday night UCL game. I'm sure they're going to want to start off well, so they're probably going to want to put out as strong a lineup as they possibly can. But with City around the corner, it'll be interesting to see like what kind of rotation happens if they go with like maybe a more passive game plan where they're not running as hard or something like that. I think all those will be really interesting details to watch out for.
Yeah, great points. I think we will definitely have to rotate, and I will be in favor personally of rotating pretty heavily for that Champions League game because we have a pretty easy schedule as a whole. And with the new format, I think we should be able to qualify pretty easily, and at least definitely qualify. You want to finish in the top 8, I think, to get like 1 or 2 buys in the new Champions League format. But I am in favor of rotating heavily, just so we can be as fresh as possible for that away City match, which is going to be really massive for the season.
Yeah, I think you should, and especially if you're not. I haven't looked at who's all in Arsenal's group, but if you're not too worried about the later games, I would definitely rotate against Atalanta as well, although they're no slouches. I think they're a big team killer. They have a very, I'm blanking on the manager's name right now, but he did really, really well to help them win Europa League last season. And they're the type of team that will really give a lot of these big teams issues because they're super physical, super athletic. They sit in a mid-block, and they're pretty hard to break down. So that'll be a really fun game to watch from a neutral perspective.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say I was overlooking Atalanta at all. I just, I would be okay to kind of pass up on that game and focus on City. But I think that's enough on Arsenal. I want to talk about United versus Liverpool, and have you recovered from that one?
Yeah, I have kind of recovered. As someone that lurks on United Twitter, it's been a rough week and a half or so since the game. I've had some time to kind of gather my thoughts, and it's still kind of painful to think about, so I won't spend too long on it. But we lost 3-0 to Liverpool at home, and I think the biggest storyline from that game, or at least most notable storyline, was, like, I think, at least in my opinion, Casemiro and his mistakes that led to the first 2 goals in the first half, and then him getting yanked at halftime. He, from the very start of the game, you could just tell he was going to have one of those games where his touch was off. Like, it was like a 50-50 chance whether the ball was going to end up at the feet of a teammate or the opponent. And he just looked like his head was kind of all over the place, just kind of running around like a headless chicken a bit. And that worries me because we needed a little bit more control in this game. And if you're going to get that from anyone, it's going to be like your veteran holding midfielder, or that's who you would like it to be. So it was disappointing to see Casemiro come out and play like that. The first goal, I really have no idea what he was thinking. Well, I do know what he was thinking. He was trying to go direct, but he just did not have to. He had enough time to take one, if maybe even two touches before he decided where he wanted to pass the ball. But instead, he tries to play a first-time ball. I don't know if it was over the top or between the lines or what he was really trying to do. But all that to say, really ill-advised pass, passes it straight to the defender, and I immediately go, like, as soon as he tried to make the pass, I said, why would you do that? And then it led to a goal, and I was really disappointed to see that. And then our second goal, again, he receives the ball. This time he's under a bit more pressure, and I understand him giving the ball away more. But instead of hitting the ball first time in this situation, he thinks he has enough time to kind of carry the ball, which he doesn't. He gets bullied off the ball, which I don't think a younger, more sprightly Casemiro gets bullied off the ball as easily there. And then Liverpool turn around and score again. And to be fair to Liverpool, they were extremely clinical. They created good chances off of pressing us and getting the ball back, but at the same time, they really buried chances well. Like Luis Diaz's finish for the second goal, I believe it was like not an easy finish. He slotted that bottom right corner very, very well.
Yeah,
and then go ahead.
Really nice first time finish from him. Not an easy chance. He just took it really, really well.
Mm-hmm. So I was really impressed with that. And then third goal in the second half, we saw Kabi Menu, similar situation, receives the ball, doesn't have many options, just gets shoved off the ball, and Liverpool counterattack and score again. I think that one was through Salah. And I think from a United fan, here's what I took from the game outside of Casemiro having a stinker. He made some really bad decisions on the ball, but at the same time, I think some blame needs to go to our build-up, because the options on the ball should be a bit more obvious and a bit more rehearsed at this point. So as much as Casemiro shouldn't be making rash decisions like that, he should have some better options available to him. I think not to get too into the weeds, but I think our build-up, we don't have many options close to the ball. We like to play long and over the top and a little bit direct, which works if you actually make the passes, but you're so exposed at the back if you don't, because we push our fullbacks high up the field and wide. And so Liverpool did a really good job of keeping their attackers high. So it was a risk if we got past their first line of pressure, but we weren't able to get past their first line of pressure. And then once they won the ball back, they had more players closer to our goal than we had. And so it was an easy 4-on-3, 4-on-4, almost one-on-one situations across the pitch, which Liverpool have the attackers to take advantage of that between Salah, Diaz, and Jota up front. So I think from my perspective, that was disappointing to see, and that puts Ten Hag under a lot of pressure. The media has had a lot of time to kind of dissect and talk about where things went wrong and talk about, it's a crisis and all this and that. That was my biggest issue with the loss, was that not that we lost to a really good Liverpool team, because I think that could have happened, but it was just the timing of the loss and the manner of the loss right before an international break. It just does no favors to take any pressure off of the team. Mm-hmm. Did you get a chance to watch the game yourself?
Yeah, I went and watched it with Riley and some other Liverpool fans at a big Liverpool bar in DC. It was a great time. I mean, it was a great time. Not that I'm a Liverpool fan, but just like the environment we were in, and given that everyone was so excited and the energy was up, it was a fun time watching the game. But yeah, you made great points. Casemiro was really not on it, both physically and mentally. You could tell. There was one clip I saw where he had the ball on the sideline. He turned, tried to go up the sideline and just lost the ball, and it stayed in bounds and just went to Luis Diaz. And you could just tell Casemiro was not in it whatsoever. But I think he made great points about the United's build-up. I think the biggest takeaway is that Slot just won the tactical battle over Ten Hag. It really is going back to singing Slot's praises, because Liverpool looked really good, up for it. The way they pressed you guys high up on the outside backs and forcing you guys to the middle made it difficult and put a lot of pressure on Casemiro and Calvin Manu, who's super young And like you say, you guys aren't given many; those players aren't given many favors in terms of your build-up, especially when I'm an elite pressing team that's coached so well, like Liverpool.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, I think, and then Liverpool's looked clinical. They finished their chances really well, as you said, and yeah, it was a dominant performance from Liverpool. But I want to talk about the two managers because I think they're both big talking points. And I made sure to watch both post-game press conferences or interviews, and there's such a stark contrast in terms of Ten Hag and Slot. Ten Hag's been there for years now. Slot's just got there, and Slot just you mentioned this, so that's kind of a point I made. I made a point going back to watch Slot because you talked about how well he speaks, and I was just really impressed in his post-game interview, how well he explained United's tactics and then Liverpool's tactics to counter that, why Liverpool did what they did because of what United does. And when Ten Hag was interviewed, he just didn't really explain anything, got super defensive, and just wasn't willing to share or open up or take any much responsibility at all. So it's such a stark contrast in the two managers, in my opinion. Yeah, any thoughts on the managers and post-game interviews?
Yeah, I thought, well, to your point on Slot, I think I did really like his post-match interview and like kind of how he broke down like why they left their 4 players so high and then how they made up for that and just kind of explaining his tactics. I thought he made it super easy to understand for someone that like might not be as familiar with that. And then, like you said, in contrast, Ten Hag, I think there was the viral clip of the reporter asking him, like, you know, like, what do you think of these common errors that we're seeing in your team? And Ten Hag kind of brushed it off and basically said, you know, I've won 2 trophies, so I don't disagree with, or I don't agree with you. And I feel sorry that you have that opinion and whatnot. And it just did not come off well. He seemed like a bit defensive and like a man that just like was out of excuses in a way. I guess, play devil's advocate, no pun intended, for Ten Hag. There's still some players and some things that need to come back in for it to be his team right now. Like, I think we have a lot of the same players as last year, versus, and the new players that we have, De Ligt and Mazraoui, are still getting used to building those relationships. And then Casemiro is not going to be our starting defensive midfielder moving forward. I think we've just brought in Ugarte, who's going to come in. And although he doesn't completely solve all of our issues, I think he's going to be a little bit more physically combative than Casemiro right now. And then also, Ugarte is much less willing to go vertical and is much a safer passer. So in that situation for the first goal, instead of seeking that home run ball over the top, I think Ugarte probably takes a touch and plays a safer, more recycled pass. So I think there's things to defend, but I think as far as like how they handled the media, I don't like, to be fair, I think the media loves posting anytime Ten Hag talks about his trophies, but he just needs to stop mentioning the trophy thing, because every time it gets mentioned, it gets brought up and clipped and quoted, and it just reflects poorly on him. Even though I understand, like, in some of the situations, like, some of the questions are kind of leading him to give those answers, but I just think he needs to, I don't think his English is as good as someone as Slot, who's much more well-spoken and much more coherent and charismatic when it comes to speaking on these things.
Yeah, Ten Hag doesn't do himself many favors with some of his answers and his demeanor. I understand his English isn't as good, which I kind of feel for him on. I'm not really blaming him for that, but he just doesn't do himself many favors bringing the trophies up and with his demeanor a lot of times. Yeah, I think if he would just take a little more blame sometimes and not come off as defensive, it would go a long way. But we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see. I think, like I said, Ten Hag's going to be under a lot of pressure after this game, and he's getting a lot of attention in the media. So I think he's going to have a big job post international break to try and quell some of this, quiet things down around the club, and just get a little bit more stability going. Like I said, he's got some important players returning between Rasmus Højlund, Luke Shaw will be back as well, and then in a couple more weeks after that, we'll see Lenny Euro returning to training, as well as Mason Mount. So I'm hoping that helps steady the ship, especially with us not having to start Casemiro. I think the issue is our system is just so reliant on that defensive midfielder to play really well. And when you have someone like Casemiro who's low on confidence, things can fall apart really quickly. So I'm hoping getting a more stable figure in there will kind of help stabilize things as far as like at least the build up goes, because a lot of things build off of each other. Like if you can build up better and keep the ball better, you're not as frantic on defense, not facing as many transitions and things like that. So you could see things falling into place. But this Southampton game right after the break is going to be really big. And then we've got Carabao Cup and Europa League matches, a couple easy ones before our Premier League schedule gets hard. And I think it'll be really important to win those 2 to 3 matches before we go and play. I think it's Palace, then Spurs, and then another not gimme team, like I think Villa or something like that. But things can get ugly really quickly if the team doesn't figure it out. So
to ask the list, to ask you what the listeners want to hear, do you think he should be worried about his job at all, Ten Hag?
I think he should be worried about his job if things continue like this, but I don't think he should be worried about losing his job anytime soon. With Ineos deciding to keep him this summer, they actually came out a day or two after the international break started. 2 executives, it was Omar Barada and then I believe Dan Ashworth, both put out 2 public statements basically saying, we fully back Ten Hag, we believe in him, and we're working with him to make the vision that we saw together come to life. And I don't think that was by accident. I think they knew that there was going to be a lot of noise and kind of already had these PR quotes or whatever set in place to kind of quell any rumors that he might lose his job anytime soon. If anything, I think it'll be something where around Christmas time, around December, if results aren't great, if United's sitting I don't think he gets fired if we're sitting in 7th, but I think 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that, like any bottom half or like 9th, 10th, that's at that point they might consider making a change. But for now, they kind of have to stick to their guns, because you can't keep the manager and put out these statements of, we went out and talked to other managers, but we determined Ten Hag was the best man for the job, and then turn around and go back on that. That just looks bad on them from a leadership perspective. I think they have to stick with Ten Hag at least till Christmas.
Yeah, I don't think Ten Hag is the answer United, personally, but I think it's way too early to think about firing him this early into the season. So I agree. Come around Christmas time, if you guys are in like the bottom half and results or the way you guys are playing is really bad, then that's when the question can actually be asked. But yeah, right now, this is way too early.
Exactly. I think it's too early. I think you need to give him a chance to actually integrate those transfers that you spent that money on before you can judge what the team looks like. And speaking of those transfers, we can move on to our transfer window review. And the way that we want to do this is we're going to talk about some of the most notable teams. We're not going to cover every team, but we want to talk about some of the big teams, the business that they did. We're going to talk about incomings, outgoings, and then at the end, we're also going to rate and put each team's transfer window into tiers, starting with A, B, C, and D. And to start, actually, before we start, I'm going to text Courtney back.
Dude, nice segue. That was smooth.
I was listening to... I made a point to try and do that more often. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts. It was the Athletic Football Podcast, and I noticed how well they do
I like them a lot.
Yeah, I noticed how well that they do that on one of their podcasts this week, and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, let me try and, with every subject, just try my best to have a nice segue into it.
Yeah, that was clean.
Okay, so to start off this transfer window review, we're going to start with Arsenal in Spain. Since this is your club, I will let you handle this one.
Yeah, so Arsenal had, I think, an okay to good transfer window, nothing crazy. We brought in Calafiori, Mikel Merino, and Sterling on deadline day as our notable incomings. Outgoings, we got rid of a lot of our academy graduates that weren't getting enough minutes. That's going to help with PSR, getting that pure profit from them. So it was necessary transfers we had to get rid of, even though I love a lot of those players. We let go of Smith Rowe, Nketiah, and Reece Nelson on loan from the academy, and then we let Ramsdale go to Southampton. I really love all those players. It's sad to see them go, but ultimately I think this is the best decision for the club and the best decision for those players. And I'm excited to watch all of them. I'm happy they're all staying in the Premier League so I can watch them continue to play. Yeah, and like I said, I think it's an okay to good transfer window. Ideally, we would have signed a big name striker on top of that, and that really would have made it like a good to great window. But bringing in Sterling on deadline day, I think was enough to make it a good transfer window. I was really excited about the Sterling transfer, especially hearing what the deal was with him taking reduced wages, Chelsea paying half of his wages, and no loan money involved. And I think he's got a lot to give. I'm pretty excited that he hardly played any minutes last year. That's like a whole year of him not getting like tired or like wearing down his legs. And he's worked with Arteta before, and I think he's got a lot to give. He's got a lot to prove. I'm excited about him. He can play left wing, right wing, and he's really just going to be backup for Saka, which is what Reece Nelson essentially was. So I think he's a definite improvement over Reece Nelson, and he's got a lot of experience. So having him come in for the Champions League games and laid off the bench in the Premier League, I think is great for us. Calafiori came in earlier in the summer. He's bedding into the team, but he looks like a fantastic left back, really marauding, fun player. So excited about him, obviously. And then Mikel Merino, we haven't seen him yet, unfortunately, because he had that shoulder injury in training before he could even get on the pitch. So he's going to be out for like 2 months or so, I think. And that's a real bummer, as I mentioned earlier, just given our lack of midfield depth. But he looks super solid, and I think he's also a really good signing. So overall, I think it was good. Content with our summer window. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I will say I think it was a very interesting window for you guys because I think you did a great job improving an already very good defense by getting Calafiori. And Timber, I know, was hurt last year, but he kind of feels like a new signing, but I won't count him, obviously. And then midfield, I think Mikel Merino was a very clever signing for you guys. I think he can bring a lot to the team. And then I think what takes you guys from kind of like a pretty good to a good window is that Sterling deal. Because Sterling is he is a very good Premier League player. He's proven it at multiple clubs at this point. He, like you said, didn't play too much last season because although he's not that old in age, he's pretty old in terms of Premier League minutes played because he's played so many minutes from different clubs. So it's good that he's coming in a bit fresh. And then in terms of the financials of the deal, you just can't. It's hard to beat Chelsea covering so much of his wages. And he's someone that if he can come into a system that is actually good and functioning well, I think he's someone that can come in and contribute like at least 20 goals and assists in a season. Like he's proven that over and over again, that he is an output machine. To be honest, I went back and looked at some of Sterling's stats in his career, and I was kind of shocked at how many goals and assists that he's put up through the years. So I think that's really, really good business from Arsenal. And it, like you said, it does stink to lose some of those guys like Smith Rowe and Nketiah and Ramsdale, who have been kind of club favorites for a while, but at the same time, it needed to happen. It's good for PSR, and I think overall Arsenal has improved. The one thing that I think you guys could ask for more is kind of that elite number 9, that elite striker to kind of come in and be a difference maker. But at the same time, I like that you didn't just go out there and get a suboptimal solution. You had your target, which I think was Benjamin Sesko. And when he was off the table, I like that Arsenal was like, okay, we'll just sit with what we got in-house. Kai Havertz is still on fire. So I think it's not something that is going to hurt you too bad in the season. I think Premier League-wise, you'll be fine. Sometimes in the Champions League, you kind of just need that kind of X-factor player that can create a moment out of nowhere. But at the same time, Arsenal's still a good enough squad that you can get away with that, and the window still looks good to me as a neutral fan.
Yeah, and just a little bit more on Sterling. It's like basically zero risk signing, 1 year loan for what I already mentioned. So it can't be bad. If it doesn't turn out, it's so what? There's basically no risk at all. And I think a lot of people just have a warped image of Sterling. They forget how good he was because he was at Chelsea and he's got that Chelsea stink. And that's not his fault. That's like a club thing. And I'm happy to save another career from Chelsea as we do with Jorginho and Havertz. I'm excited to see him thrive. And just seeing the social media posts that Arsenal putting out from Sterling, he looks so excited to be at Arsenal. I don't know if he's excited to be from Arsenal. Is that excited to be at Arsenal, or just that excited to get away from Chelsea? But he's cheesing and he's got like the biggest smile on his face, and he looks ready. He looks hungry. So I'm very excited to see him get some minutes for us.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think one thing that I thought that I wanted to mention that I forgot about is that not only is he going into a system that's functioning, but he's probably going to come into the season with a chip on his shoulder with the way that he kind of was treated at Chelsea. One, just the slander that he got last year, but then on top of that, kind of being iced out of the squad in the way that he was. I think he's going to come in with a point to prove, and he's going to try and, I think he will prove that point this season for Arsenal.
And last thing, if you didn't see Arsenal's Instagram like revealing post, it was so cold for a lone player. I was not expecting that at all, but it was quite cool. So you should check that out.
Nice. I haven't seen it, but I will.
Yeah. All right, moving on to United. Let's hear your thoughts on their transfer window.
Yeah. So as a United fan, I think to put it simply, I think the incomings that we had are good, not great, but pretty good in terms of like what I was looking for out of the window was to get younger, to get a more physically able squad, and to not overpay too much. And so as far as incomings go, Euro and Xerxes are both young players. Euro's 18. Xerxes, I'm not sure how old he is, but I know he's on the younger end. De Ligt is 24, I believe, about to be 25. Mazraoui is maybe a little bit older, but not too old. And then Ugarte is 23 years old. And all of those players, Mazraoui maybe not the most physically adept player, but Euro is a physical specimen, but he needs to fill out a bit more. Xerxes is a big guy, he's 6'4", big body. De Ligt is also a pretty physical center back, and Ugarte is known for his physicality, his speed, his strength in duels. So I'm happy those all check those boxes. And then Euro we paid a good bit of money for, but I think he's still so young that he's gonna retain his value. And then everyone else I think we got for pretty decent deals as far as what their market value was. Maybe besides Ugarte, that was the one deal that I wasn't as happy with the price on. PSG bought him for 50 million euros and somehow sold him to us for 50 million euros. So maybe a slight overpay, but that was our number one target, so I don't really mind that. And then outgoings, I think, is what took me from being kind of average to it being a good window, just because from a United fan's perspective, I don't think our outgoings made us better necessarily, but something that we've struggled to do for so long is to move on deadwood from the club. Like every year, instead of selling players, we've been stuck loaning players that have no future in our squad, and then we eventually lose players for little to no money or for free. And so I think notable outgoings for us were obviously Scott McTominay is the biggest name, and he's the one that I'm going to miss the most. Scott has been such an example of what it means to be a United player for us. He's come up with goals in some of the biggest moments, some of the hardest moments. I'll never forget last season. We were already having a tough spell in the league, and we were down, I believe, 1-0 to Brentford, about to have another disappointing loss at home. And Scott McTominay comes on and scores 2 goals in the 90th plus minute to give us that win. And it's just examples of that where he's just so United through and through, never give up. He will do what the coach asks. He trains well. He works hard. He's a leader in the training room or in the dressing room. So he's someone that I'm going to miss, but it needed to happen in terms of PSR. And I think he wanted a new challenge himself. From what I've heard, he was one of the people kind of pushing for the move because he was offered a starting midfield role at Napoli versus at United. He was always going to kind of be this utility bench player. But I'm happy for him, and I hope he goes and shines over there. As far as other outgoings, I think United did very well to get 26 million for Greenwood with everything that went on with him. Wan-Bissaka, selling him for 7.6 mil was also good business. And then we got rid of Donny van de Beek, Facundo Pellistri, Hannibal, and Alvaro Fernandez, who are all young players besides Donny Van de Beek, who just needed to go. He never quite fit in. And then Sancho was another great player. I'm glad, not great player, but I'm glad that he left the club. It was never going to work out for him here. His preferred position is left wing, but he's not going to get that position over Rashford or Garnacho. And then on the right wing, I think Ahmad and Garnacho are both more effective than him there as well. And he's on way too high of wages to just be a squad player for us. So I'm glad we got that loan deal done with Chelsea. And I think he can fit in with the Chelsea squad a bit better in terms of fit and in terms of vibes. I just don't think he was gelling well with the squad, obviously, with the fallout with Ten Hag last season. So overall, I feel good about our window. I think it raised our floor. I don't think it raised our ceiling very much. My biggest miss as a United fan, or in my opinion, our biggest miss was that although we got Ugarte into midfield to replace Casemiro, I still think we needed another midfield signing, and that midfield signing did not come. So that's something that I'm going to be worried about this season. I just don't think we have the legs or the personnel in midfield to kind of help at least guarantee that we finish in a top 4 or 5 position. Unfortunately. So that's my biggest issue with our window. But overall, I'm still happy with it as far as the business goes. I think we showed that we're not going to panic and overpay for players too much. And we're actually willing to move players on and make solid deals. Because even the outgoings that we have players that we might have not sold for huge fees, but we have sell-on clauses to where if they do go on to be successes at other clubs, we are going to make money off of them. And if not, well, we got a fee for them and got them out the door anyway. So overall, I'm happy with United's business.
Yeah. I would be pretty happy if I was a United fan. I'm interested to see how Ugarte does. I haven't really seen much of him play, so I don't really know what to expect from him. I think De Ligt is going to be an interesting signing. He could be really good, or he could he's gone to some big clubs now. He went to Juventus and then Bayern, or I can't remember if it was Bayern then Juventus, but hasn't really proved himself. I'm sure he's been I think he's been okay there, but hasn't been great and hasn't. These clubs are selling him for a reason, so he's got a lot to prove. And I've been interested. It's been interesting that he's been subbed off early in all the games so far. Do you know why that's been?
I want to say it's a match fitness thing. Like in the previous game, the last game against Liverpool was the first game that he started, and I believe he got subbed off. He might have been on a yellow, but I think it was also kind of just I want to say it's just like a match fitness thing. Gotcha. Because I don't think he was training or playing much for Bayern in preseason. So I think we're trying to really avoid any sort of injury fiascos like we had last year. So a lot of players are on very strict minute restrictions right now.
Gotcha. Okay. I think the success of your transfer window for me personally will hang strongly on how good De Ligt is, because I think he's a really important signing. You definitely need to strengthen that center back position. Also Ugarte, but more so just with De Ligt, because I think there's a lot of pressure on him to do well, and especially with Euro getting injured. For me personally, it'll hang on how good De Ligt is. But yeah, I think it's okay transfer window for United, and good to get a lot of those players out the door that weren't getting minutes and just weren't great for the squad.
Fair enough. I think that's enough on United. We can move on to City if you want to cover them.
Yeah, so City brought in Savinho and Gundogan. They brought him back from Barcelona for free. And then they sold Alvarez for 75 million euros, got a ton of money for him. Granted, he is good and young, but just with how the market's looking right now, I think they did some really good business selling him for that much, especially to a club like Atletico, who I feel like don't really spend that much money. So to see him go for that much was pretty shocking. And just to see him go in general, because he is a young, talented player who played a lot for City. I get him wanting to leave to get more minutes and to be a starter, because he has a lot of potential. But they did really good business getting that much money for him, with a player demanding to leave as well, because a lot of times clubs know that and will underpay or use that to leverage down the cost. They sold Cancelo for 25 million euros. I forgot he was even on the team still with him being gone. But yeah, they loaned him out last year, so they still owned him. and they got rid of Calvin Phillips and Sergio Gomez. Overall, they didn't really bring in hardly anyone, but they already had a really strong squad, and Pep likes to keep his squad nice and tight. But yeah, they did some really good business, having like a net of like 100 million euros like profit this summer. So not good in terms of bringing in anyone that exciting. I don't really. Savinho's looked pretty good so far, but just good business from City. They're a really well-run club.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said. I want to, like, Savinho looks like he's going to be a good sign. It's going to play a lot of minutes for them and can play on the left or the right. So not like he's two signings, but he can play multiple positions, which is nice for them. And then them getting Gundogan back for free is pretty insane business for them. I know Gundogan's up there in age, but that's just such a good leader to have on the team. He's been in all the biggest moments. So when it comes to Champions League nights, comes to these big Premier League matches, you know what you're going to get from Gundogan. He knows how to play these games well. And so for them to get him back, I think that's super nice, because I think they were almost going to be a little light at midfield, and all of a sudden it looks like they're back to full strength there. And then Alvarez as well is really good business, as you mentioned, to get that type of fee for a player that was wanting to leave. I think that's pretty insane. And I know I understand why he wanted to leave. He never quite fit into the City squad, at least as a starter. I think he was always going to be a bench player, and I don't think for someone that's in his age range where he's at right now, I think it's important for him to go out and try and be the guy that he wants to be. So good for Alvarez and good for City.
Yep. Well said. Going from one title contender with very few signings to another, I'll let you talk about Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool is easy. This one is they brought in Chiesa, which was at the end of the transfer window after seeming like they weren't going to make any signings for this season. And they also bought a goalie in Mamar Dashvili, but he's not going to play for them until 2025. I believe. I think he's not going to play until the following season. He's on loan somewhere, and then will come in later. And then as far as outgoings, they sold Fabio Carvalho, who I think was never going to force his way into the team. And then Sepp Vandenberg, I don't even know who that guy is, but they got 23 mil for him, so good for them. And then I think another piece of good business that they did was loaning out Stefan Bajetic. He's pretty highly rated as a midfielder, but he's just young and still needs to get a lot of first team minutes for his development, and he wasn't going to be able to get that at Liverpool. So I think it's good that they were able to loan him and that they avoided having to sell him as well, because I think from everyone that I know that kind of does a lot of the scouting of these young midfielders, a lot of them rate Bajetic really, really highly. Like even when he came in for Liverpool, I think it was 2 seasons ago, he played some pretty good minutes for them. He looked really good even at that young age that he was. So I think he's a player that can end up being a top player for them if he can go out, get some minutes, develop correctly, and then come back to the team. But as far as Liverpool goes, they didn't really improve their squad too much. They already have a pretty good squad. I think the one thing that they're missing is that kind of true number 6, which they were trying to sign with Zubimendi, which that deal didn't end up working out. But I do really respect the way that Liverpool goes about their business. If they're not getting their number one choice, they aren't willing to spend money on someone that's suboptimal, similar to kind of how Arsenal goes about it. And I think I really respect people that kind of have their methods and stick to them. So although they didn't really improve their squad, and I don't think this is a great window for them, I still think bringing in Chiesa could be good if he's able to stay healthy and contribute in any way. They basically got him for pennies. And then I like that they didn't waste money on suboptimal signings as well. So I'll give them a pretty decent window, but can't call it great with them not really bringing anyone in.
Yeah, and to me, the best piece of business was not losing Van Dijk, Salah, or Trent. Because last year when we heard that Klopp was leaving, the rumors started flying, and everyone just kind of assumed, myself included, that Van Dijk was getting up there in age, so I thought he was going to leave. Salah was getting up there in age and running down on his contract, and Trent wanted to leave. So keeping all 3 of them was the best thing for Liverpool. And given that, and them not really selling anyone, they didn't really need to make too many signings. So like you said, not too much going on, incoming and outgoings, but keeping Van Dijk, Salah, and Trent was huge for them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I forgot about that being on the table, and it'll be really interesting to see how that develops, because I think all 3 of them are in the last year of their contracts right now.
I know
Or
Mo is because that little interview after the game was really interesting. That came up out of
yeah,
nowhere.
yeah. Yeah, they were pressing him a little bit, being like asking about the contract situation. He was like, "We haven't talked about it," and he kind of phrased it as, "This is my last year at Liverpool," which is interesting for him to say.
They weren't even pressing him. They just like brought it up, and he's like, "Yeah." Well, he's opened up like, "As you know, this is my last year at Liverpool." So he's the one that like prompted it in the interview. It just came up out of nowhere.
Yeah,
So I don't know if it didn't. He said it with a smile on his face. I don't think he's upset or like really pushing for it or anything. I think he's just being really honest. Mo Salah looks amazing right now. Like he looks top form. Looks so in shape. Looks so quick and so mentally there. This is the best he's looked in like the last 2 or 3 years, in my opinion. Maybe the last 2 years. So they should get him to sign it. But that was just a really interesting point that came up. So I'll let you speak on that a little bit.
yeah. So I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens this season. I think a lot of if they can keep those guys will depend on how the project is progressing. Like if they have a very strong year, I see no reason why those guys might not sign back on, and if they think that they've got a chance to kind of compete for some of the biggest trophies. But if not, it'll be really interesting to see how they go about their business. I think the next summer transfer window is going to be a really, really big one for Liverpool. And because Salah, Van Dijk, I don't know where their head is at. Trent, I've seen him teased and talked about rumors with Real Madrid. I think Real Madrid really wants to bring Trent in, and so I think he's going to be one to watch because he's so Liverpool through and through, came up through the academy and everything. But at a certain point, it's going to be hard to say no to that Mbappe, Jude, Vinicius, Real Madrid team. If he can go join them and join the Galacticos, I feel like it's a hard project to say no to if he's not fully convinced by Liverpool. So those are going to be some really interesting contract negotiations to watch out for.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to play in that team? I think Trent's contract does end at the end of the season, and just from a Liverpool perspective, you would love to sell him because he will be sold for a lot of money, and he is an academy kid, so that's straight profit for PSR. So it would be unfortunate for Liverpool to lose him on the free when they could get 60 million for him easily if he's got like a 2-year contract.
Yep. Yeah, so who knows? But overall, I think Liverpool should feel good about where they're at in terms of their squad. Like you said, regardless of having not brought in a lot of players, but they kept on to some key players or held on to some key players. So, and then talk about a team that did a lot of business versus Liverpool who did no business. We can move on to Chelsea.
Yeah, so Chelsea, as they have been doing over the past couple of years, made a ton of signings, ingoings and outgoings. They brought in Pedro Neto from Wolves, which I think is a fantastic signing. They paid a lot of money for him, given how 60 million euros, given how injury prone he is. And so in that sense, they might have overpaid, but I think he's a really talented, really dynamic winger. They brought in Yao Felix again, Dewsbury Hall from Leicester, and Jay Sancho on deadline day on loan with an obligation to buy. As long as they finish above 13th, they have to buy Sancho. So unless something goes really bad for Chelsea, they will buy him. Outgoing wise, they sold Motson, who was on loan last year at Dortmund. They sold him to Aston Villa. He looks like a really talented, dynamic left wing back. They sold Conor Gallagher, which was a little surprising because he was their captain and started midfielder last year. It seemed like he wanted to go more so than like them pushing him out. But 42 million for him, who I believe is the academy kid, so a lot of good profit there for PSR reasons. They got rid of Lukaku, who needed to go. They sold Lewis Hall, who I think was on loan at Newcastle last year already. They got good money for him, a young, talented left back. And then Thiago Silva left. He was getting up there in age, so it was time for him to go. Ziyech left. He was on loan. It was time for him to go. He wasn't playing. And they got rid of Kepa, Chalobah, and Sterling, also all on loan. So a lot of outgoing for Chelsea as they just have a really inflated squad. I don't really know what to make of their transfer window. They just bring in so many players, get rid of so many players. I was like, it's fine. I think Neto is a good signing. Felix had looked good coming in, again, that Wolves game, but I mean, they were up so much. I don't know if Yao Felix has that much in them, and I don't really know why they've had so many attackers there's just so many attackers. Like I just don't know what to make of Chelsea really.
Yeah,
I think it's like okay, but just so hard to make sense of them with such an inflated squad, so many attackers.
yeah. I'm in the same exact boat. Did they do like I think one of the biggest wins is finally offloading Lukaku, and then their signings. They signed all good players. I just don't know if that's exactly what they needed for their squad, where they already
Mm-hmm.
had good players. Like they already have so many good players in their team that it's just hard to like figure out exactly what the impact is going to be, what the marginal gains are there. And I think despite the number of good players and attackers they brought in, I want to say the one thing that I think all fans of Chelsea would have said coming into into the transfer window is that they want to look for a number 9, and they
Mm-hmm.
didn't bring that player in. I know they were looking at Osimhen and maybe Ivan Toney and stuff, and it ended up signing nobody. So that's really interesting. But I do think Nicholas Jackson has looked pretty good to start the season. But say he picks up an injury or something like that, I just don't know that they have the firepower, goal scoring, and the striker position to make up for that. So really hard to tell, like what, or really like you said, really hard to make to decide what I make of the transfer window. Gallagher leaving was also a big one, like you said. I think that was PSR related. It sounded like he kind of
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really wanted by Maresca either. But Gallagher came out in an interview a couple days ago, actually, and basically he got asked about it, and they tried to get him to kind of throw some shade, I think, and he gave a really good answer and kind of just like, I think both parties were left happy with the situation, and that's what matters. So
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad he was able to leave because at one point it looked like the deal was breaking down and he was going to get stuck there, which would have been a shame if he wasn't going to be playing at all. So yeah, happy it worked out for him because he's a likable guy. But that's all
yeah,
on Chelsea. We can move on to Tottenham. I'll let you talk
yeah.
about them.
I think Tottenham had a very interesting window because they brought in a lot of good players, and I'm not really sure. I don't follow Tottenham so closely to know exactly what their needs were, but I will say, just in terms of their incomings, they brought in Solanke for about 64 million euros, and I think that's a very good signing. I think he's a top player. It sucks that he's already hurt right now, but I think he looked like in the one game that I watched that he played, he looked like he was already gelling well with the team. And I think Tottenham really could use that goal scorer in the team because Son through the middle was good last season, but I think he's best when he's working with another striker that plays through the middle, and Son can kind of cut in off the left and play
Mm-hmm.
that role. And then they signed Archie Gray. Lucas Bergvall came in on a deal that they made the previous transfer window, but he finally joined the team this season. And they also signed, I believe his name is Wilson Odobert from Burnley. Was he on last season? Um,
I think it's Odebear.
Odobert, excuse me. We say Odobert because of Bert.
Nice.
So that's it. Stuck in my head. But I think all those are really good signings. I really love Lucas Bergvall. Looks like a heck of a player, and Archie Gray, I think, is he was my favorite players in the championship last season, and I think him signing for 40 million euros, it might sound like a lot for a kid, but the guy plays like he'd be like a player beyond his years. I think he's going to develop into a really, really good player. And then as far as
Mm-hmm.
outgoings, they let go of Oliver Skip, who I think is an academy player, so that was good for PSR profit. I don't think he was good enough to break into that team's midfield. And Emerson Royale is gone as well. Lo Celso went for 5 million, and then Højbjerg also left the team. He looked like he was not ever one of Ange's first choice midfielders, so I'm kind of glad he got away from the team, was able to find a loan for him at Marseille.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as their window, I think they had a pretty good window. I'm just not sure what their needs were coming into it, to be honest. I don't know if any of those signings necessarily take them to a whole nother level, besides Solanke is a good ceiling raiser for them. Like, he'll definitely bring more goals in the team. But outside of that, I think they're just slowly building a good floor and a good base to their squad for Ange.
Yeah, I don't agree. Slunky adds goals. I think he is a good signing. He's an experienced goal scorer in the Premier League. I think he will score a lot of goals. And like you said, they needed a true number 9. Because I don't think Richarlison was that. And Son is better off the left, in my opinion. But other than that, signed some young guys, and I don't really think they improved that much. I think they're going to finish about where they finished last year, based off of not really improving the squad dramatically anywhere. But I do think getting rid of Emerson Royale was good business because he caused them issues when he did play. So not having to play him, I think, is good for the team.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. I think that's all we got on Tottenham, and then Newcastle is another team that I don't think did too much business on their end as well.
Yeah, Newcastle did hardly anything this transfer window. I think they're trying to just figure out PSR. With them getting bought a couple years ago, you thought they were going to be splashing the cash, but because of PSR, they can't do that. They brought in Lewis Hall for $33 million from Chelsea as a left back. I believe he was already on loan at Newcastle last year. He looks like a good talented left back. They brought in Lloyd Kelly, a defender, for free from Bournemouth, and he's experienced, just not great, but okay. And they let Elliot Anderson go. He was a really talented center mid that looked great for them when he got minutes last year. So I was surprised to let him go, but they got 41 million euros for him, which is a lot of money for such a young player. And then they also sold Minta to Brighton. Minta has looked really good on the right wing for Brighton. He was on loan last year at Feyenoord, so I didn't really know much about him, but he's popped up on the scene. Looks like a really exciting, dynamic right winger, and they got good money from him. Overall, Newcastle didn't really change their squad much. I think them holding on to Bruno Guimaraes was big for them because there's a lot of rumors about him leaving, like possibly City, possibly Arsenal. But yeah, not really much going on with Newcastle. So bad, you could say, because they didn't really do much, but they still have a pretty good squad. But yeah, just not very exciting from them. And honestly, the transfer window as a whole, like the summer wasn't very exciting across the world. Just the market really wasn't there for a lot of big spending. So not really much happened until like the very end. But overall, yeah, so it was just quiet from Newcastle.
Yeah, I think Newcastle's an interesting one. It looked like they kind of just were more focused on PSR, like you said. Like Elliot Anderson was a good sale for them, and then Minta, who you think could come in and help this Newcastle team, who probably could use a little bit more bodies on their wings. It looks like they just had to sell him, even though he's a talented player for PSR purposes. They brought in Lloyd Kelly, which was good business, on a free. I think he's a talented defender that can cover left back and left center back for them. I think they were hoping to make a marquee signing with Mark Gahey, but they didn't want to splash as much cash as Crystal Palace was asking for. So their squad's kind of left in a very similar spot to where they were. I know they also were thinking about offloading Trippier, but I think this is something that could... Newcastle's in a very precarious situation because if they don't end up performing well this season and they end up not being able to prove to like players like Bruno Guimaraes and stuff like that they have a they have a project that is actually going to be competitive, they could lose some key players and then not improve well enough to where they could kind of slide back down from being a potential Champions League team to someone that's kind of knocking on the door rather than competing. So I think that's going to be something interesting to watch out for with Newcastle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so not much going on there. Villa had a little bit more business, but I'll let you talk about them.
Yeah, I think Villa is someone that was in a similar situation in Newcastle, but did better job with their business. Obviously, they made Champions League, so they had a little bit more money to splash this summer than someone like Newcastle, who was out of Europe. But Villa, I thought Maatsen was a good signing for them. I thought Barkley was a good, cheap signing for them, and I think they did a very, very good job getting Amadou Onana. That is a player that was, I think, being at least scouted by some of the best teams in the league. Between Arsenal, I know United were looking at him, if not super seriously. He was still on their list. I know Barcelona was looking at Onana as well. He was one of the hot targets, and I think going to Villa was a perfect move for him in terms of it's Champions League football. He's going to get a starting position, but it's an environment where it's not too much pressure as one of these super clubs like a Barcelona, an Arsenal, or a United. So it's a nice intermediate step from Everton to where he's at now. And I think if he performs well at Villa, he can still earn that. He's still young enough to earn that big move to a bigger club if he wants to in the future. And so I think Villa did a really good job by recruiting Amadou Onana. It kind of came out of nowhere as well. I know a lot of clubs were talking about him, but then Villa was not really in the discussion. Out of nowhere, I saw the David Ornstein exclusive tweet that he dropped, and it was kind of a big bomb. So good on Villa for doing that business. in a sleek way and getting a really top player, and I think is Amadou Onana in that midfield. And then outgoing wise, I think they did a really good job to get as much money as they did for Douglas Luiz, who was one of their better players last year. But to get 52 million euros from Juventus, I thought was some pretty crazy business. And then Diaby as well for 60 mil to Saudi Arabia. So they did a good job basically offsetting what they paid for Onana and Matson while still raising the floor and the ceiling of their squad with those players.
Yeah, I thought losing Douglas Luiz was going to hurt them a good bit, just because he was pretty vital to them last year. He came with a ton of goals, which was like surprising that he scored so many goals. But they had that young player Rogers, who stepped up and looked really strong this season. So it looks like, and then he's more of a box to box, whereas Douglas Luiz might be a little bit more defensive. But like you said, they brought in Onana, who's looked really strong for them, and just helped bolster that midfield. I think Villa did a really good job with the transfer window. Their wing might be a little short with losing Diaby, especially playing in the Champions League. I'm a little concerned or interested to see how their winger rotation is going to be. Losing Diaby because he was really good. But yeah, I think it was a good summer for Villa.
Yeah, nice. And so the last team we want to cover is West Ham. If you want to touch on their incomings real quick, we can do that and then move on to ranking.
Yep, West Ham, they brought in a good number of players. They brought in Max Kilman for Wolverhampton. He's a center back, younger than I thought he was, so it looks like he's had a good start to this season, so that's a good signing. They brought in Somerville from Leeds. They brought in Fulkrug as a striker coming out of Germany. I think that was a really good signing, and it'll be interesting to see how he fits into this team, because West Ham are a little bit more of a transition team, and Fulkrug is not a transition player really, in my opinion. And then they brought in Wan-Bissaka from United. I think Wan-Bissaka fits West Ham, like that profile well, just like a solid defender. Doesn't need to be the most attacking, but he can, like a true, just traditional right back. I think he fits that profile well. I thought West Ham's defense was poor last year, so he elevates that and just in terms of defensive. And then Todibo with a loan with obligation to buy. That's like the biggest surprise and the best signing. I mean, Todibo looks like a really promising, talented center back coming out of France, and United were looking at him. So I'll let you touch on that, Toch, in a second. And then Carlos Soler, is that the center mid from they brought in, or is that someone else I'm thinking of?
Yeah, that's the center mid from PSG, Spanish
yeah.
guy.
Well, yeah. I didn't even know that he was coming in. And just being at PSG, he's got to have some talent. Haven't seen him play much, but has known from FIFA more than anything, really.
Yeah,
but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what he does. I think they brought in some good signings. They brought in a ton of players, really, and I'm excited to see them get integrated into the team more.
Yeah, I agree. I think West Ham did a lot of good business. They brought in a lot of talented players, so good for them. I know they're trying to go through a big transition phase by bringing in Lopetegui and going through their kind of post-David Moyes era. And I think they're trying to transition from being more of a transitional team to a more possession-based team eventually, but there's going to be a lot of growing pains. But at the same time, they've got a very fun squad between, they already had Paqueta, Bowen, Mikel Antonio, who's like some notable players there already. And then the players that they added, Somerville was one of, if not the best player in the championship last year for Leeds, people were saying. Kilman, like you said, is good. Fulkrug was one of my favorite players to watch in all of Europe last season, so I think he can come in and score goals for West Ham. I love Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Sad to see him go from United, but I do think he fits what West Ham is doing better than what he would fit in United. And then Todibo, that was one of our top transfer targets for over a year. We were actually looking at bringing him in last January if we could, but ended up not having the funds to make a deal then. And then we basically had everything set to bring him in this summer. And all of a sudden, I think it was UEFA blocked the move because Todibo is a player at Nice, or was a player at Nice. And because Nice is owned by Ineos, who also owns United, and we're both competing in Europa League, there was like a conflict of interest that blocked the move, and we weren't able to bring him in. So I think good on West Ham to swoop in and get a player that I think was already on the way out of Nice, I think he's on a loan with the obligation, but I don't think the obligation is that expensive. I want to say it's like 25 million euros for a player that can end up being very good for them. So that's good business overall, and I think they did a great job bolstering their squad. At least not if it all doesn't click this season. I think they're going to be a competitive team moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Is Carlos Soler going to get any minutes for them? I mean, because I don't really know anything about him and did not realize that West Ham got him.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have no idea. I didn't really watch much of him at PSG. I think he's kind of been a player on the fringes that kind of plays like squad player minutes for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be someone that's going to come in and allow them to play a little bit more possession-based style. I'm stereotyping, I guess, because he's Spanish.
Yeah.
But I know he also came from PSG, playing under Luis Enrique, who also likes to play a possession-based style. But I think their midfield is pretty strong because they also they brought in another. What's his name? Rodriguez, Rodriguez, who's an Argentinian midfielder as well. So they have a lot of competition in that midfield. So I don't think he's going to come in and be a starter, but he'll probably be a squad player that'll play some pretty meaningful minutes for them this season.
Nice, yeah. I'll be interested to watch him.
I guess let's touch on some other notable transfers, and then we can kind of grade each team's transfer window. But touching on some other notable transfers, I think another big one is Michael Olise leaving Crystal Palace. He left for 53 million euros. Big signing for Bayern, big loss for Palace, but I think it's something that needed to happen for them. And hopefully they can figure out how to replace his productivity. It looks like they're struggling to do that a bit right now, but it's still early. I think Glasner's a great manager, and I think he will be able to get the most out of that Crystal Palace squad eventually. But yeah, I think he's going to be a big miss for Crystal Palace this season. Do you have any other ones?
Yeah, with just on Elise, 53 million euros is, I think, a really good deal for Bayern. I don't know if Elise's contract was running low, so they got him for like a better deal, but I think he could have gone for a lot more just based off his talent and age profile. And then Evan Nilsson came in from Bournemouth. Don't know much about him, but he was an expensive signing. They brought him in to replace Solanke up top. Don't know much about him, but he should be a starter for them eventually. And then I'll just talk about Ivan Toney leaving.
Yeah, Ivan Toney leaving Brentford is a big one. He's kind of been touted as Brentford's best player for a long time. And I respect his kind of journey because I believe he came up through the Championship and kind of has just been an underdog player his whole career. He made a name for himself at Brentford, and then he had the whole issues with like the betting scandal last season and coming back from that. And then he was still able to represent England at the Euro, scored a big penalty for them, and I think he's just someone that has been an interesting player to watch. I love watching him so much. So good at the football, I think, when it comes to just being able to do a lot of different things. Like, he's a great target man, can bring the ball down, can pass really well. Not the most prolific goal scorer for, like, what his rep is, I will say. Like, I think his stats, like, I don't think he scores as many non-penalty goals as people would realize. But at the same time, I still think he's a great player. And great for Brentford to get 50 million for him. I think it was time for him to move on, and I think Brentford actually will be just fine without him. I think Visa and Mbeumo are both two players that can replace what Ivan Toney was doing in terms of goal scoring output. So I think it was good business by Brentford to get rid of him, and then also good on Ivan Toney to get his big move because he went from being on 50K a week at Brentford to now he's on 400K a week untaxed in Saudi Arabia, and I think they're paying for all his living expenses as well. So, like, that man, like, more power to him. Like, I don't care that he didn't go to another big Premier League club like he might have been rumored to. I think that's a great move for his career. He's getting up there in age, and he deserves to get a bag because for as good as he's been, he hasn't been on that big of a contract. So I say get that bag while you can and enjoy your life. Do you think?
100%. I didn't realize he was making that much money. Going for that's a huge pay raise. So good for Ivan Toney.
Yeah. So let's move on to doing a power ranking. You can share your screen and get us set up.
All right.
Yeah.
Actually, don't think. So I'm on my dad's laptop, and I just downloaded Chrome, and he doesn't have share screen accessible. I don't know his passcode, so I can't change the settings to be able to share my screen.
Okay. That's all good then. I'll just do it afterwards and we can just like talk through the ratings.
Okay.
Okay. Um, let's see. So, starting with Arsenal, I'll let you kind of give your rating and then we can discuss from there.
Yeah, I'm going to give Arsenal a B. I think we brought in necessary players, didn't bring in anyone, like, didn't have any bad deals. And bringing in Sterling, I think, brought it up to what we needed to. And we got rid of the players that we were kind of not quite up to par and just kind of, not dead weight, but not elite talent. And we got good money, okay money for them. So I'm going to give us a B. If we would have signed that big number 9 just to kind of bring the X factor in to like Champions League or to like get a ton of goals, then I would give us an A. But I'm just a B, and I'm like I said, I'm content.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. That's exactly where I would put them. I think Arsenal, like you said, they did good business, and I think Sterling at the end really gave that transfer window a boost for me as well. I think that's just great value for what you're paying, which is basically nothing. So I'll put Arsenal at a B as well. And then I guess moving on to United now, I would say, from my perspective, I think United's window is also a B for me. Just in terms of, at least as from my perspective as a United fan, like I said, I just really wanted to see us working on outgoings because that's something that we never do. And I'm actually really happy with the outgoings that we had. McTominay is going to go down as pure profit. Mason Greenwood is going to go down as pure profit. And that's almost 56 million euros worth of pure profit between those two players. And then, like I said, I think all of our signings are young players that at least raise the floor of our squad. And I really like the Lenny Euro deal that we did. I thought that was something like it's rare that a team, like a player that is so heavily tied with Real Madrid doesn't end up going to Real Madrid. I thought that was good of us to go in and get an 18-year-old player. Like, I guess by contrast, in the past, what we would have done is we would have let Lenny Euro go to Real Madrid, and then after he's won a Champions League or two, we would have bought him from Real Madrid for about 100 mil instead of what we paid for him now. So as a United fan, I'll give it a B just because I think an A would have been if we brought in another marquee midfielder to help our squad. But I do like all the signings that we made.
Nice. I agree with a B on United. And City, do you give them an A just because they did so good on Julian Alvarez deal? And like they had like over 100 million profit for the window? Yeah,
I mean, I feel like you have to. As it's hard to improve a team like City, and I think I like that they're incoming. I like Savinho as an incoming, and I really like Gundogan as an incoming. And then, they're selling, which is so good between João Cancelo and Julian Alvarez. And then they also got Calvin Phillips away from the team, which I don't think he was dragging the team down, but he was always just kind of like this talking point, kind of like that eyesore of a team of a player. In this Pep era. Like, I think he's one of the few signings that Pep has gotten wrong. So I think it's kind of good to have him away from the team and not kind of pulling any attention towards him anymore as well. So I'll give them an A.
Nice, yeah. I'm going to agree with that. Yeah, Gundogan's really good, bringing him back in. And then with Liverpool, I think a B. I mean, we talked about like the biggest thing they did was hold on to their players. I mean, maybe you give them a C because like nothing happened. You can't really like grade them for holding on to the players in this sense. That's not really like their transfer window. So taking that out of the equation, I'm going to personally give Liverpool a C. But what do you think?
Yeah, I thought about giving them a B as well, but at the same time, you're right. I think just in terms of incomings, outgoings, I just don't think that they did anything too crazy. They got some decent fees for Carvalho and Vandenberg, but at the same time, I just think it was a little bit underwhelming, and they missed out on their primary transfer target in Zubimendi. So I think a C is probably fair for them.
Yep. I'll let you tackle Chelsea first.
Yeah. Chelsea. I don't know what to think of Chelsea because, like you said, they brought in so many talented players, but I don't know if they brought in players that they needed to. I thought it was good that they got Tosin Adarabioyo. I think that's one player that was an incoming that we didn't talk about. They got him for free. He was talented, but at the same time, they're letting Trevor Chalobah go, who I think is just as good of a player as Tosin Adarabioyo, and they didn't even get a fee for Chalobah. He's just on loan. I don't think that their business with Sterling was good. I think that reflects back poorly on them. So as much as they brought in talented players, I do think they missed out on their number nine, and they made a couple moves that I don't really love. So for me, I would stick Chelsea at a C, even borderline D, just because I don't like Chelsea.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think they improved the squad much. I don't think Dewsbury Hall is like that great of a center mid. I think Dewsbury Hall is good, but I don't think he improves the squad that much. I think Neto is the one player that does improve the squad, but I think they overpaid for him given his injury history. And Sterling was really bad, so I'm gonna push it down to D.
Nice.
Chelsea.
I love that, actually. I'm going to clip that and put that in there. All the Chelsea fans, if we can.
Yeah. Gotta liven up the FPL chat again. It's been a little dead recently.
Exactly. I've missed having Christian in there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Spurs is the next one. Did you want to tackle them?
Yeah. I'm gonna give them a C, maybe a B. I think Solanke was a good signing, and it addresses a need. But actually, I'll probably give him a B. Solanke addresses a need. Archie Gray's talented, and I don't really know that much about Archie Gray, so that's part of the reason I was like teetering CB. Odebear, don't know much about him. Odebert. Is that how we're referring to him on this pod?
Want to call him. Yeah.
And then Bergval looks talented, and they got him for a good deal. They got rid of Skip and Royale, who I don't think were good for the team. So yeah, give them a B.
Yeah.
C, B minus if we're gonna go like plus minuses.
Exactly. Like that's kind of where I'm at. If I could put them anywhere, I'd put them like a C plus B minus range. Since we're not doing the plus minus, I'll give them a B. Just because I do think they really needed that striker position filled, and then I do really love all the young, talented players that they brought in. So even if it doesn't pan out for them this season, I do think they've set themselves up to have one of the most exciting projects in the league in terms of young players that they have in the squad.
Cool. Newcastle, what are you going to give them?
Newcastle, I don't really love the business that they did. I don't think that they improved their squad really at all. Lloyd Kelly, like I said, is a talented player, but I don't think he's someone that necessarily raises the ceiling or even raises the floor all that much. I guess he raises the floor a bit, but I might have to give them a D just because I was kind of hoping to see a little bit more ambition from them.
Yeah, I'm giving them a D for all those reasons. The lack of ambition was really surprising from them. So yeah, give them a D.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was easy. Let's move on to Villa. What do you think?
Villa. I think they had a good window. I'd probably give them a B. I'm gonna give Villa a B. If they make one more really amazing signing, I'd probably give them an A. But I think they made just really good. I think Onana was great. Madson's great. Barkley for some experience, and then getting the money they did for Diaby and Douglas Luiz. So I'm saying a B. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think I just really do love that Onana signing from them. I thought that was really, really good, and then just the money that they brought in on top of that. I would argue B plus A for Villa. I think their squad could be a little bit deeper for the Champions League, like you said, especially when it comes to like the wing position. But at the same time, for I think the restrictions that they're working with, because I don't think they have that much money, I think they did a pretty good job improving their squad. So I'll give Villa B plus A. I guess we can meet in the middle.
I'm happy to put them in the A category if we gotta go strictly A or B.
Okay, nice. And then the last team we had was West Ham. And for West Ham, I think I love a lot of the signings that they did. I thought they had one of the most exciting transfer windows in terms of a squad. I can't remember what their outgoings looked like to see if they really moved on like Deadwood like that. But I'll say I think they did really good business and they're one of the most exciting up and coming squads. I'll give them a B.
Yeah, I think it's a B. I think they did good business, but nothing like crazy. But good for where West Ham was at and improves the squad overall for sure. So I think B is a very fair decision for them.
Nice. All right. Well, I think that's all the teams that we have that we wanted to rate today. Let us know what you think. If you agree,
Yeah.
if you disagree, are there any signings that you think that we left out, even when it comes to teams not that we talked about today? Is there any other things that you had on the transfers today?
No, that was fun. Little exercise. It's hard putting in these teams like in like an A or like A, B, C, or D when it like comes to it. But it was a fun little exercise to see just to rank how each team did. Not the most exciting transfer window, but it'll be fun to see how these players bed in. And personally, I'm just excited to see Raheem Sterling play for us.
Yeah, I think Raheem Sterling's going to be a really exciting player to watch. I'm really interested to see how some of Chelsea's new signings bed into the team, especially Sancho. I'd like to see if he's going to get some meaningful minutes for them. And then as far as United goes, I'm praying that our signings improve us, because if not, we might be in a world of trouble. So my fingers are crossed there, both for my sake of my watching sake, and then also for Eric Ten Hag's job as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and more than anything, I'm just excited that the international break's over and the Premier League's back this coming weekend.
Yeah, agreed. I'm really excited to see what all the teams look like coming back from the international break. That was another thing I didn't mention, but from a United perspective, a lot of our players look really good playing for their national teams, which is either going to bode well for how they come back and hope they bring that form back into the league, or if they don't, it's not going to look good on Ten Hag that these players are going off and performing and then coming back and not looking good. Like we saw Diego Dalot scored a goal combining with Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes scored a goal in the second game that they played. Joshua Zirkzee scored his first goal in his first start ever for the Netherlands. And Matthias de Ligt looked pretty solid for them. Scott McTominay, he's not a player anymore, but Scott McTominay scored for Scotland again. Who else? He's been carrying that team for a while now, actually, in terms of goals scored. So I'm hoping a lot of these players can carry their form back. And then Marcus Rashford is working with some pretty top individual trainers. I saw someone that helped Noni Madueke get back in form as well. So I'm hoping Rashford can kind of figure something out as well.
Nice. Yeah, we decided to see how Rashford does, because big season for him, as we talked about in previous pods.
I also hope I don't ever see Casemiro start for us again, unless it's like a meaningless game. I hope Ugarte slots right in. He played decently well for Uruguay over the international break. I know Ten Hag said that he might take a while to get up to match fitness, but it looks like he's ready to contribute as far as I can see. So hopefully we see him play against Southampton this weekend.
Nice. Yeah, that'll be one to watch coming up.
So yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, please remember to rate. And yeah, we will catch you guys in the next one.
Yep, up the Gunners for the North London Derby.
All right, see ya.